It's, in a nutshell, freedom. Carp fishing as it should be. Felt right, you know, real buzz. It did feel good. And yeah, little did I know what was about to happen the next morning. Captures like that for me that just make carp fishing so special, you know, it's just, it'll never ever get boring. Absolutely crazy. Without a doubt, one of the best mornings fishing I've ever experienced. So behind me is a section of a wild 120-acre gravel pit. Lucky, I mean really sort of lucky to get permission to fish on here at the start of June. Fell in perfectly, didn't close for spawning as per late May, early June. Literally the following week, I had a catch up with a friend I'd not spoke for a while and yeah, learned that come and have a go on here if you want, mate. Do what you want as well, use 4 rods if you like, you can go out in the boat. The only rule sort of being, you're not allowed on the lake when the boats are out. It's a wakeboarding lake, you know, so there's quite expensive boats flowing around, obviously dragging people doing all sorts of stunts. With that, it makes it all wild, you know, there's all big sections of ropes, you know, that travel from bank to bank, buoy sectioned, sort of framework in there, big lumps of concrete, you know, it's a typical wild pit, plenty of structure and everything in the way of it all. It's been nice, you know, you spend all summer, all spring on Dinton. It's a rat race, you're up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning to get there, a couple hours before light, to run around at the chance of getting in one of the going swims, you know, it can be quite, it's a complete rat race. So to go from that to come onto this, you know, it's just like, oh. There's been myself and 3 others that have sort of had permission to come and have a go on here. And yeah, I say it's a big old pit, 40 or so carp, you know, it's never going to be easy going, but I had the phone call, you can imagine, straight away. In the garage, getting all the boating gear out, sorting everything out. And the 10-footers were back on with it, you know, being able to use the boat and just so much easier. Big gear sort out, re-spool, sorted other stuff out, and yeah, the next day I was actually flying down. And luckily, flat calm when I got here, red hot, you know, sort of, like I say, it was early June, start of that real sort of warm weather. No sign of spawning yet at all. A couple of the lads that had previous, well, been given the nod to have a go if you like. Had a mooch around and got eyes on a few of them. So yeah, all buzzed up, met my mate and he sort of said where I can and can't fish. There's a big house on a sort of point of it and the big section divides the lake up. It's, although a very big lake, you know, it's very sort of split up into sections. And with that drive and garden, if you like, it's all the inner of the lake, if you like. And yeah, access around the outside quite bad. So we can get the van in and sort of in and around, but yeah, the actual sort of main drag was a case of loppers and sort of bow saw, you know, edge of the van saw, forward a little bit, take that out. Half a day's work, you know, but fun, you know, I enjoy that sort of stuff, make your own swim and yeah, it's been mega enjoyable, but sort of coming back to that first trip, arrived, red hot, met my mate, can do this, can't do that, and yeah, if the boats come out, just make sure you sort of get off the water. And with that sort of set off, you know, big old battery charged up. I'd had a new battery not long ago, I'd not actually a chance to use it yet, so good few hours mooching. And straight away there's a rope that sort of goes across into a section. And didn't know anything about the pit, the deep areas, shallow areas, bars, so on. You know, when it was, the clarity was quite good at the time. Perfect opportunity to get out and learn as much as possible and equally, you know, try and find the fish. And straight into the section, like I said, there's a rope that sort of goes across, probably the narrowest point of the lake. And yeah, no boats into that section. Naturally, always had in my mind, you know, they're going to be in there away from all the hustle and bustle of the boats. So set off in there, good mooch around, you know, ages, flat calm at the time, you know, looking for any signs of dorsals breaking, backs breaking the surface, but nothing, completely devoid. All the likely looking areas, you know, didn't stumble across anything. And also like a real lack of sort of cleaned off areas. I think out the whole mooch around there, you know, there was 1 or 2 scrapes that I come across that looked fish sort of made. And I knew the stock was low, and quite a lot of tench. So with that sort of set off and yeah, mooching up another sort of main drag, I suppose where the boys are. Yeah, not long I'd sort of got around the corner there, got eyes on my first one, quite a long, old sort of looking, sort of scaly thing making his way along the margin shelf. And low 30 pounder I would have said, but as quick as he's seen me, I've seen him, I had a bit of a look at him and he's sort of scooted off, but load of weed around. And not been able to see the bottom in the meadows area, you know, inky sort of black by the look of it. And there, you know, I can see the bottom, big weed beds coming up, you know, you're clearly 8-9 feet of water. See everything, like literally looking into a bath, can see everything. And as I've sort of gone further up that bank, and yeah, they were there. There's one, there's another one. Probably seen about 12, 13 fish in this area, and one or two of the good ones were there as well. You know, I was looking at definitely a 40 pounder, a couple of big 30 pounders as well. So obviously they've all buzzed out. I'm looking now where is my nearest point I can get fish in. I knew the other lads that had permission and sort of had a week or so, you know, down the week previous, having a mooch and putting a bit of bait in. So more courtesy more than anything, I sort of rang both of them to see sort of where they'd, or if I was to go there, would it interfere with anything that they'd done? And it so happened that it would have. My nearest point where I could access where I'd seen these fish. Although a very long way, you know, you sort of, my idea in my head was taking rigs from 200 yards in the boat, place with the boat, come back. That was the closest I could get with them without fishing over this section of ropes and cables that sort of run the full length. You know, these fish were here, I'd have to fish across them to get to them or down a bank. And yeah, a quick phone call was made. He didn't say, oh, no, you can't go in there, not at all. You know, he's like, mate, do what you're doing, you know what I mean, like, crack on. But it was more, if the shoe was on the other foot, I'd want the etiquette. And yeah, so with that, I had a rethink, had another mooch around all the other section, didn't find them anywhere else. And so yeah, just sort of pondered it for ages really. Can I fish over these ropes, can I not? Very, very weedy lake. On sort of closer inspection, as you sort of went further up, the lake almost sort of bottlenecked in. And right opposite where the point where the house is actually. And spoke to a mate quickly, I was like, is there any chance I can sort of fish off that point? He's like, no mate, no, it's in their garden, they've got a dog. And I was like, yeah, cool. You sort of clocking, there's a bar that ran right the way across the lake, literally from that bank all the way across. And as it sort of got to my near margin, it sort of broke off, left and right. And with the bar, you know, you probably look at about 8 feet either side of it, the bar's probably 5.5, 6 foot. These cables that were on these series of ropes, and I think there was 3 in total, ranging from sort of 20 yards, 40 yards, maybe 50 yards. They sort of disappeared into the bar, and then obviously you see them sort of hanging a few feet off the bottom, either side of it. That was my only option really, you know. Obviously the bar was sort of, although no weed on it apart from a few inches of onion weed, I could fish, you know, I could fish sort of past the ropes, I could fish into the area, although not right on where them fish were, certainly a passing point in my mind. And yeah, that was it, decision made. I could fish a couple of rods, get the line lay, big weed beds at the surface, sort of beyond the last buoys, so I'd hook a carp, it'd take line, straight out in the boat, ropes wouldn't be an issue. So that was it, the sort of plan was set, got a couple of rods out there, last decision I flicked one close. The bar sort of broke off, and as it sort of disappeared down, dropped an H-block, flicked a rig at the side of it, could just see a little pink bait there fishing, you know, and yeah, a few handfuls of tigers and 20 millers, and out of there. And yeah, in the morning, obviously up sort of hour before it's like coffee on, you know, buzzing. It's a real sort of buzz in it, you know, your first morning on a big sort of new well pit. Yeah, sort of sat watching, and I had a couple of liners on the margin rod. Like, see, there's loads of little patches of bubbles coming up. You know, the abundance is tench is quite obvious. Yeah, with that, the left-hander, the one that just sort of last thing, it was the 4th rod. I just thought, you know, rather than have it not fishing, I'll just put it there. Did up tight with that, sort of picked it up. It souped over, and this mirrors at the surface, and then it's charged off. Pretty sure it was the one I'd seen on the other side, sort of the day previous. Yeah, bit of a battle with him, and in the net, real old thing, you know, mega. Bits of his tail been chopped off, big dink in his back where he'd clearly been slammed by a boat at some point. You know, he was mega. Some dinosaur out. Proper old beastie. I think it's just over 32 pound he was. And so with that, in the sling, obviously all buzzed up, set up, did a few self-takes and a little bit of video, and yeah, back you went. With that, like the tench, I mean, they really were doing me. I sort of didn't prepare with that first trip, if you like, bought a few tigers and 16 millers, you know. I've been fishing dent, and a lot of what I fish on there is 12 millies, crumb, bits and bobs. Knew that there was tench obviously present, but I didn't know how bad. And out of these 60, I couldn't literally keep a rod in the water, you know, it was a joke. 16 mil hinges and the biggest pop-ups I could get, you know, it was a joke. Literally, chuck it out, sink the line, it'd go in your hand. And I remember the last morning I put on, they were really, really long hinges, the biggest orange pop-ups I could find, chucked them out there, and I'd actually had a tension in the morning, re-chucked it out, and been up most of the night, so I sort of crashed out, and I'd sort of slept over. You know, it was probably getting on for 9 o'clock. With that, woke up to a bite, well, a few bleeps, as I sort of looked out, I turned the sensitivity down, the amount of weed and waves and so on. So I knew if you get a few bleeps, you know something's going on. Looked out, Bobby's in the alarm, poof, explosion on the top, it's cracked out, one on. Took a bit of line, and it's come off pretty much instantly, and all the hinge all sort of twisted up. So last morning, a little bit gutted, but you know, I'd taken plenty of bait with me to try and prep something for the following trips. Yeah, I mean, I had a good mooch around. There was still a few fish in that area on the other side of the lake. And I literally put in what I had left, sort of got a clip with a marker. All sort of nice work, you know, 80 yards. Went out there, big spread of boilies, loads of chopped, you know, a bucket of chopped tigers, pellets. Although, you know, I knew the tent were going to eat most of it. It was more, I was hoping with the volumes of it in the area, obviously spawning not far away, they were going to make use of it. And yeah, filled it in. Everything I had in the van waiting on that area. And I came back probably, I think about 3 or 4 days later. And it was sort of a last minute thing. I wasn't going to be coming fishing till the morning. To be honest, I had a bit of a bust up with the missus. She's like, you might as well now. And I didn't get here till like literally 9:45, you know, the light's at its limit, like it's going. And yeah, quickly wrapped the float up, out. I didn't even go out in the boat, you know, just a couple of kilos of 20 millers. You know, I'd done a bait order previously, and yeah, got some 24s and some 20 millers, bigger baits, and some hard up baits, 20 millers, you know, we were ready. But I had 3 rigs sort of tied up with these hinges, you know, I got some 18 mil pop-ups rolled up. 3 hinges, I thought that should sort them, bigger ones. So yeah, what? 3, 4, I don't know, kilos of these 24s and 20 millers all around the marker behind it. With it sort of, you know, the bar was running behind it, so it was never a problem if they went beyond or just short. They'd be in the nice area. So yeah, all sprayed out there. I never waded out one of these 18 millers. Boom. I've just put out 3 or 4 kilos of boilies. I've not set my net up or nothing, you know, I've chucked it out and sinking my line, whack. It's gone in my hand, you know, massive tension. I was just like that. I literally turned around, chopped all my, I had 3 rods ready to go, chopped them off. I say it's dark. And yeah, re-tied up when I got like a 16 miller pop-up, inch gap, 20 mil tough one, inch gap, size 4 hook, and you know, not really long hook links, but sort of lengthened them up a little bit. All redone, nuggeted up, whack. I ended up putting the 2 rods out in the end. And yeah, crashed out. It was sort of quite late by the time we got sorted. And yeah, 4:30 in the morning, woke up to a bite, melting bite literally. Me fishing really sort of tight clutches in the hope that they kite into the weed beds, like I mentioned earlier, either side of the spot. And yeah, now this one's just stripping, mental thing. Turned out to be a 30-pound common. I mean, it's weeded itself up, and then I hit the surface and just cranked, you know what I mean, gingerly sort of cranking it all the way across the ropes, and yeah, no problem at all really. Yeah, proper buzzing with it. That character. And yeah, I think £30.12, so yeah, another good one, real sort of plump, sort of crucian-y shape if you like. Yeah, real mega one. With that, put the rod back out, and it only been a matter of minutes, and the other rod that had been out all night was away. Lovely, prehistoric, blistered with little, you know, he's mega cool one. I think he's only £25 light, but you know, again, he looked a million years old, just starburst scales all over him, like a real sort of tingy grey special carp. So you can imagine 2 bites straight on that, waiting for it to got light, and sort of flew out. As the sun got up, and obviously, you know, they were doing what they were doing, got out in the boat and had a little look, and oh, yeah, they'd done some damage. You know, this onion weed that was sort of little gravelly bits coming in it as I was fishing the previous trip was just mullered. You know, all the weed and milfoil had been pushed down at the side of the bar. All this big sort of silty area had opened up. On the onion weed was gone. You know, it looked a bit too clean, so I just fished, well, I fished 3 rods on the spot then. I put one on the real blatant stuff, and as the milfoil and the silt opened up at the sides, you know, like I say, you could place the rig, so one there, job done. Everything was sort of set for the night again, and yeah, down for a 3-nighter. And again, like I say, all set with these big snowmans now, just bright. I think I put a yellow one, a pink one, a white one, you know, I didn't see, and they've not really been fished for quite a while. Yeah, traps were set, went into the night, and pretty quiet really, didn't really hear a lot, see a lot, but was keeping them rigs out fishing, you know, with these big snowmans, these big baits now. Yeah, first light come, you know, the normal sort of, when I'd had the bites, 4, 5 o'clock, out there watching, to be honest, expecting one. Nothing. 7 o'clock come, nothing. 8, nothing, you know, jump back in the bag, catch up on a few hours. And with that, I've woke up to an absolute, again, I'm fishing them tight, you know, and tight. You know when they're taking line off there, you know, it's a powerful fish. And yeah, woke up to a bite, clutches, it's taking line, picked it up, took quite a bit of line on the bite, as sort of intended, you know, boom, wedged up in the weed, but solid in the weed, you know, and obviously the boat's there, not wanting to, no need to, jumps in the boat. As I've sort of winded myself to it, it's hit the surface, and then it was just a case of I'm sort of pulling myself to it and it's slowly coming towards me, you know, there's never really much pressure on it at all. Bit of weed over its head, and then straight away I knew the big one in here, you know, he was missing an eye. He's on that side, you know, and the weed sort of over it a little bit. I think it's a good one. You know, I'm nearing it now. Net, it's just perfect, you know. As I'm sort of drawing it, perfect net. As it's gone into the net, it sort of kicked, the weed fell off its face. Realised which one it was, you know, just in a, hell yes, mega. Yeah, sort of rolled him up in the net, and yeah, no doubt about him, you know, he was there, beastie. Weighed him up quickly. I think he was 46.4 if I remember right, yeah, 46 something anyway, beast.
Under the ever-watchful eye of the maker, the life asleep inside the ground awakens.
Well, that was it for the end of that trip. What was it then? Yeah, again, sort of baited up when I got off, but the spot, like I say now, it was becoming quite gravelly. Obviously everything was getting involved, the carp, the tench. Come back on again, got them out just before dark, woke up to a bite. No, I didn't put them in the same spot. I got there a little bit light, and I've gone out there and seen how sort of hammered the spot was, and just thought, oh, I'll take it a few rod lengths further. Like I say, it was only 8-10 inch sort of onion weed, so make the rigs to sort of suit, you know, big 8-ounce grippers. Plop 2 down, I just fished the 2 rods, but much further on the bar, sort of nearer the point on the end of the bank that we couldn't fish. With that, you know, sort of a spread 2 or 3 kilos of these 20s and 24s, and yeah, out of there. Woke up to a bite, again that sort of early morning period, and a lovely 26-pound mirror he was, sort of a fold in his tail, short chunky one, yeah, mega. About 3:45 this morning. Start out from that little bar area in front where I've been getting a few bites. Yeah, Put quite a bit of bait in before I left, a lot of 20 millers. So the tension a nightmare in here. And that was it for that trip. Yeah, just that one bite. I think they spawned, if I remember rightly. I left and a couple of other lads that were fishing ran me up and said, oh yeah, there's a group of fish sort of kicking off in the boys sort of section, spawning, made sent me a bit of a video, you know, clearly a few of them at it. And I left it a few days. I think I left it 3 or 4 days. So sort of after that, you know, clearly they're not going to all be at it. There's not many in here at all, you know, very different to sort of the commercials, if you like. There might be a pod of fish that just don't get involved, the older bunch, you know. But it was all new and exciting and learning, so I was coming. So yeah, I got down, bit of a change in weather, you know, warm, but you know, after a good mooch round, no sign of them really, and certainly not in that section. And I remember I had a real sort of good mooch round, and I stumbled across 2 fish in a corner. It's actually like the northeast corner, real weedy. It's where the sort of rope goes into the bank, so you're limited there, you know, with the ropes hanging mid-water, so you're kind of limited to how far you can fish out. And it's on a mooch in there and clocked one right in the edge, you know, it was a good one as well, good upper 30. And another sort of smaller one, upper 20, sort of right up against the trees. So with that, you know, a little bit of bait. There was actually a few scrapes there. It was one of the only areas after mooching around a lot of the places, it was clearly something had gone on there, you know, a gravel spot and shells turned over sort of further down the margins, then another rod length or so, another little spot that had been grubbed about. But the week previous I'd seen it and dropped a few handfuls of tigers on it and come back, them fish were there on inspection, you know, so like the tigers were still there. So I was a little bit like, oh, have they only just come into the area or? So I thought anyway, I had a couple of kilo of 20mm manillas and yeah, put them over the spots. Got back up to the section where I had been catching them. Rods out, thought I'll check that tomorrow. Anyway, nothing happened. Wound the rods in, gone for a lap and just sort of mooched down in the boat. There's no sort of trees in that area, you can sort of get up and have a good look. I was sort of ticking across in the boat, you know, I've cut the engine some sort of 20 yards away, just sort of brushing in. Awkward cloud, a little bit of awkward light, and I'm sort of, you know, trying to sort of look, and as I've sort of focused on the spot, I was struggling to see, not more so the light, but it was all sort of coloured up a little bit. And as I've sort of clocked this fish, it's clocked me and poof, kicked off, you know, a big trail of fizz has gone on for some 20 or so yards out of there. As it sort of settled, you know, most of the bait was gone. But pretty sure, you know, there's only really the one getting in there. Put a little bit more bait on it, keep an eye on it. Another night bite where I was. And nothing. Again, sort of nothing. I think you start thinking, oh, you know, there ain't many in here, and I ducked sort of 5 or 6 from that area now, and sure, you know, it ain't going to take a lot to sort of, and not wanting to make the mistake, sit on my hands. I've had bites from here, and you know, bait, they'll come. We didn't know how long we had the fishing for, so it was, you know, get out there and have a mooch. And again, next trip was really warm, bit of a mooch, and yeah, found a group of them in a weed bed not far off the bank, sort of just behind me here to the left. Big series of weed bed, only a few rod lengths out off the bank, you know, but 20 yards thick, it'd break up a little bit, all over the surface, you know, mega, back of the wind, red hot, they were there. Group of them, you know, 8, 10 of them. So we moved up to actually where we're sat now. Boat was out, like I say, I mean, you get a lot of the speedboats going out from that area, and luckily there wasn't anything out of that at all. Seeing these fish, it was literally rod, bit of bait in there, 2 H blocks, and it was trying to get everything as effectively fishing without, you know, obviously getting on top of them. They were in the weed, but as some, I don't know, 2 or 3 rod lengths behind them, I mean, they're not clean bars by any means, but they're clearly bars, you know, that sort of run most of the strip of the lake, and they're completely covered in onion weed. You're just looking, and through the shades, you know, the bar looks this sort of colour, and the milfoil and the Canadian to be that much darker sort of colour. So, you know, you can quickly sort of mapping it out in your head, right, fish, weed bed, bar, system, obviously they're going to use that to travel. So it was drop a block, sort of marking the perimeter of the bar, and it was just a simple case of, right, lie that rod in the middle, just to the left of that block, out of there, back, set it all up, repeat the process, you know, snowman's, the big gap in it, but this time, you know, the weed, there was probably, I don't know, probably getting on for sort of 14, 16 inches long. And big old leads again, but you sort of see it, everything will just disappear, then you just see the snowman sort of rest on top of it, you know, mega. So yeah, that rod was sort of set, repeated the process with the other one, out there, just a boilie approach, 3 or 4 kilos sort of in the area, all down the bar, sort of up to the rigs. And as I'm sort of setting these traps, you know, I can picking up the H blocks and there's sort of 2 come waddling out the weed, and you sort of sat there as soon as it's all done thinking, surely one of them's going to go. And yeah, it did. I think it was just after 1 o'clock in the morning, the left-hander, you know, you're fishing them sort of probably 120 yards or so, you know. But yeah, everything's sort of locked up, so there's a lot of weed. And yeah, it's out the clip, a few ticks off the clutch, and sort of just pumped him all the way back in, sort of slowly, 20-pound line. And yeah, scoops him up. Real old mega sort of dinky strain, you know, the big sort of typical scales across the back. I think it was 32 pound, mega, 32.10 if I remember rightly, yeah, mega thing. So yeah, obviously didn't get the rod back out, sort of left it there, still had the one rod fishing. You know, 7:30 in the morning. Beep, so as I sort of looked, the tip sprung down, you know, I've looked up, explosion over the spot, another one on. He sort of shot off left into this corner, gone through, I just sort of jumped in the boat, thought if it gets behind in all that weed, you know, we've got headache and you never know what you got on the end. So I jumped in the boat and yeah, he pulled me all over the place, but I could clearly see him, he was sort of an orangey coloured common. But there, like, eventually gets him in a common with plenty of koi in him, you know, I think he's around 23 pound. And that was that for then, you know, the boats were out in the day. No, I'm lying, the boats didn't come out that day. I remember it, we've had it sort of quite gentle, breezy, sort of blowing down air, like I say, that was off the back of it. And the weather had changed to sort of given to change. Much stronger sort of wind into my face. And I didn't have a lot of boat battery left at all. And I was sort of thinking, right, I'll get these done now in the morning, hopefully no boats come out, keep them fishing. At least I'm going to get them done much more effectively now than obviously with the big wind blowing on and all over the place, and so you can't really see the bottom the same. So yeah, decision was made, got them all done. Luckily, boat didn't come out, kept them all out fishing, and yeah, it was around midnight, I managed to catch another lovely 30 pounder. I think it was just under 31 pound, pretty similar to the other mirror really. You know, big old sort of scales across the back, beautiful fish. That was that for that trip. Yeah, I had to get off the next morning. I mean, the whole time I've been here, you know, like I say, there's only a couple of us who've had like little spots here, there and everywhere. And on from coming back from the lake, you know, I left that trip, been able to see, I was placing the rigs, and it was a case of hot, sunny, find a carp, and you know, get a spot near them and you get fishing and good chance. Rocked up all buzzing, you know, things have been going good, getting them, forget on them, I was catching them. I had a couple of clips for a couple of spots around the lake. Pulled up, more, you know, usual scenario, gets the boat out, aquascope, blocks, rigged all the engine up, battery in, let's go and have a look. It was green, literally. In the case of 4 days, it had gone from see everything to green. Yeah, big algae bloom had come on. Obviously the joy of being able to find fish, it was all right to find them all the same, you know, if you saw them cruising, but now you had to lead up round them, you know, it's a very, very weedy lake, so that joy of being able to get fishing and so on was gone. So we knew now, you know, it was going to be a bit tougher. It was a case of marker work, baiting up, a lot more looking visually, you know, not in the boat, sat there watching. So yeah, with that I got a couple of spots more so, rake them off to be honest, little gardener rake, you know, looking areas, leading around, thinner drops, get the rake off, pop it up, clip, everything sort of noted down, and just trying to get a few corners sourced out, like say one in the northeast corner, had a little margin spot rocking. Continued with that where we mentioned earlier, you know, where they left the tigers and we sort of disturbed that one feeding. Got a margin spot there rocking, one just a little bit further up the bank. That was a rake spot, you know, a 2-rodder. Kept that one baited regular. A spot up the other end, right up the other end, mentioning the rope section. But from on mooching and knowing the pit a bit more, you know, it's much deeper down there. Just mooching around in the boat with the lead on a rod and, you know, drop it down, obviously swing it up against the rod. 14 foot, 12 foot, you know, it was a lot deeper down there. But kept the spots. I knew of a couple of catches. There's not a lot to go off, but a couple of the bigger mirrors have been caught down that end, so, you know, certainly wanted to have something set up and ready down there. I think in between, after them fish, I'd done a couple of, like I say, blank trips, and it was a case of fish there for a couple of nights, nothing, try down that spot, nothing, you know, 2 or 3 trips, nothing. I can remember moving down there, I'd done a couple of nights, I sort of gone for a wander, and I see while cruising about near the deeper water spot, moved everything round, got them all sorted, and oh yeah, horrendous migraine. I ended up being really ill. I mean, when I get them really bad, you know, violently ill, shaking, it's horrendous. I ended up suffering that and just getting off, you know, it knocked the out of me. And but when I was there, I got them all out, liners, one had jumped out, they were there, you know, I needed to stay then really, but you're ill. But I put a bit of bait out, got off, I mean, it just stunk of carp as soon as you got round. I mean, I know people say, oh, you could smell them. It stunk of carp in that whole corner. Yeah, left, sorted my head out, got back a couple of days later, rods out on the spot, and yeah, caught one that evening. Well, I say straight away. I'm not sure if I lost a carp or lost a tench, but got the rods out, baited the spots, bit of a mooch, flicked them on the spots. After about an hour, one of them's whacked the top, the tip's gone round, it's out the clip, dropped back down, hit the top, a few clicks off the reel, picked it up, nothing, felt nothing. But yeah, lead all gone, rig absolutely fine. In fact, the silicone was just blown up the shank, pulled it back, it was razor still. Fresh lead on it, round the sticks, whipped it back out, only fishing close. I'd actually gone for a bit of a mooch around the corner and made this gap. I was up a tree watching a few, and lucky really, because I've sort of been up this tree for perhaps 20 minutes, seeing these fish in this area. And yeah, just walked back into the swim. And yeah, sat down, kettle on, and it's just, away, completely out of the blue. And on that same recast rod, picked it up, powerful one, it's off. Quite a bit of weed around, but then little 10-foot, the little pokers of the little 10-foot rods. Soon had him under, and jet black mirror. But one that with the lads that had previously had permission, and the few that we had photographs of, it was one that I'd not seen, and sort of sent him off to a few lads that fished it, and one that they'd not seen. So, not saying an uncaught one, but certainly an unknown one. I think he was 2710, mega, jet black, big sloping head on him, mega thing. But yeah, again, that was it. Then it was nothing else for that trip. I think I had in that first evening, again I'd done a 3-nighter, nothing. But the whole time, like I say, I've been setting up areas, and one of the main drags where we're actually fishing here, like I mentioned to that bar, running off that weed, there was a couple of strips that ran, I say not bars in the boat, look like this. They sort of ran the whole way, the length of the lake, and then they sort of break up. And I can just sort of remember sort of mooching around thinking, well, they ain't really getting down there, They took a bit of a clumping from there. Surely that bar section has got to be a big roadway, so there's no swims, it's just a row of trees. So I've sort of pulled in, had a marker rod in the boat, just wrap sticks, marker rod, bit of bait, and yeah, sort of pulled up in the trees. It's a bit of a sloping gravel shelf, you can get out anyway, moor the boat up, enough room to cast out. And with that, I thought that bar's roughly got to be, there, sweet, straight in the clip. You would never get a pull, like I say, it's covered in onion weed. But every time you'd sort of chuck it out on that, crack. Obviously just falling straight through it, crack. Chuck it rod length to the right, crack. Rod length that way, crack. Sweet, round the sticks, just over 8 wraps, lovely range. And yeah, like I say, you'd never get a pull, so with it, it was just, I'd not fished it at this point, obviously I was just getting the marks, no swim. After spawning, they want a bit of grub. A lot of tension here, so bulked it out majorly, buckets and buckets and buckets of maize. The big old ridge monkey buckets, I think you get about 20 kilos in them. Yeah, it was one of them full of maize and maples and hemp, and then, probably about 10 or so kilos of big 24 millers and, stuff that were going to stay there for the carp. Load of tigers as well. Big bait up anyway, but, no spots. It was chuck the float out 8 wraps and just that way, behind it, giving them a massive bait in an area. And anyway, I had this for probably, baited it the 1 week. Every week I'd go, but it's probably another 2 trips, was gone, sort of flitting around the pond, the pit, and yeah, nothingness, give it another big hit of bait. And I spent a couple of nights back at the section where the rope is, where I had that nice 27. Done 2 nights, nothing, and it was just a hunch, and I thought, I'm gonna go and drop on that spot there, make the swim today, break the day up, it's quiet days, and can make the swim in the day, get in there, new plot, something fresh to look at, give it a big hit of bait tomorrow. We'll give it a try in there for the next trip. So with that was done, boat was in there, procession, the big old gloves were on, bow saw, loppers, sorting it all out. It's not only the access there, it's quite a bit of a tunnel in there and then sort the back bit out. But yeah, job was sorted, job's a good one. And yeah, with that, I'd actually baited it the day before. Big bucket, load of it on there. Because I wasn't going to move, I just thought, what, sod it for what it is. So out with the float, I just literally topped it up. Probably 3 or 4 kilos of boilies, but like I say, spread everywhere. Bit of maize, tigers, job done. Then the boat's out, he's flying around, so all 3 there, wrapped up, these big snowies, all 6-ounce leads because we're casting them now. Up against a tree, we're waiting for him to go in, job done. He goes in, simple, plop, 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 fishing. So yeah, everything was sorted in there, spots was sort of set, clipped up, everything ready. Felt right, you know, real buzz. It did feel good. And yeah, little did I know what was about to happen the next morning. Covered in onion weed when I started baiting up, but literally covered in onion weed, probably about 1.5 foot high. Obviously a few big hits of bait out there. I'm just sort of seeing, cause I was fishing all 3 rods sort of like on the same clip along the bar with a big spread of bait. I mean, it's only sort of 5 foot deep out there. And if it's spotless, like with the, like I said, there's a wakeboarding, you know, it's like a boating lake, like a wakeboarding lake, you know, big powerful engines flying around, and this is the course that they take up and along here. And yeah, you can guarantee, like with that being absolutely spotless gravel, if I was to put particles on there, little bits of maize, tigers and so on, then yeah, if matey boys to come and do a few laps in his boat, you think you've all baited up nice and that, I can guarantee you the lot's going to get pushed off it, so especially in that depth of water. So obviously, see how clean it is out there, and with how clean it is, I'm just going to put out a spread of sort of 20 millers, a few 15s, and I'm going to look along the same clip further along the bar if I can get some nice firm drops, and then if I'm going to put any sort of like smaller food items in, then it's going to be in the scruffier stuff, so it ain't going to get blown everywhere really. So that's what we're looking for, Barry. Beautiful. We'd lost all clarity on the lake. Mooching around and finding the fish and sort of presenting rigs was close to them, you know, wasn't an option anymore. So, like I say, it was down to them baited areas, flitting around, you know, baiting. I think I had 4 or 5 main spots around the lake that I'd see bait on a regular basis. Every trip I was down, start of the trip, end of the trip, and yeah, night there, night here, and yeah, night here and a night there on sort of areas, and if nothing, you know, try another area. It was on a mooch round, you know, spending a lot of legwork, you know, mooching around the pit. Like I say, it's not an easy one to sort of pop your head in and have a look at there. You know, you were making little gaps to sort of sit and watch and look at areas of water. And on a mooch round, I'd spotted a couple of fish sort of break the surface. You know, there was a sort of a collection of weed beds gathered there. It's an area the boats didn't really go, but imagine they chopped a lot of the weed up, and on the wind it sort of drifted and sort of settled. That area of deeper water. And yeah, a couple cruising about an area that's seen bait for more than any. You know, we had sort of seen it the longest period of time. And yeah, dropped in there, done a couple of nights to no avail. You know, nothing had really happened. And I'm sort of winding the up baits in, you know, slightly tinted, fishing the sort of like bright mulb sort of toppers, and well, the washed out ones, you know, and they come back sort of silt tainted, you know. They're not really getting fed on as much, as the oxygen a little bit lower in that area. But one of the areas, I mean, it was quite taken on with algae at the time, and one of the areas I'd for a couple of weeks been putting bait was in the shallower strip, you know, it was only sort of 5.5, 6 foot on top of this bar. There wasn't no swim there, you know, it was just sort of like a big long straight bank, but you know, it was the course that the boat took constantly. Thinking the shallower water, you know, that area's going to get much more oxygenated. Baited it previously a couple of trips with big hits of maize and bigger boilies. And yeah, like I say, like the onion weed on top of the bar, and you can tell it had sort of definitely been fed on. Still not clean, you know, you won't get that pull, but everywhere you chuck, you get that good crack. And it was just more, I hadn't made the swim, sort of 2 nights up there, like up the other area, nothing really going on apart from seeing that fish break the surface on the sort of like to get into that area too. And yeah, it was one of them, you know, not a lot happening here, right, packed everything up, chucked it in the van, drove round to this area, and left the boat over there, knowing that, you know, I'd have to sort of moor the boat up. There was no swim. And not knowing exactly where it'd fall, obviously where I could get my van behind me. So I've done that, walked that round, and sort of boated into the swim, well, boated into the area. I'd actually sort of, when I was baiting up, you know, I'd sort of pull into the bank, cast the marker from, well, there's sort of like a little tree to the left, cast it from there, but you know, just snapped a couple of branches where I would sort of like make the area to put my rods. So I knew I was doing it, you know, from the sort of exact same point each time. And so yeah, pulled the boat in there, sort of snapped enough to sort of get through, and then yeah, pulled the boat in, loppers out, you know, big set of sort of gardening gloves, loppers on, you know, a lot of big sort of hawthorn and stuff around, big brambles. And yeah, loppers, sort of bow saw and got to it, you know. The little slot that we've got here now was sort of made, brolly up. I say I'd not sort of seen anything to move to it, it was more I had a night's fishing left, get round there, you know. It was eyes on that bit of water as opposed to that bit of water for the last night. And yeah, make the swim, leave the boat in here in preparation for getting back in a few days' time. And I'd baited it quite heavily, only sort of the day before. You know, big sort of ridge monkey bucket, 20 kilo one full of maize and, like I say, boilies and so on. So I didn't really want to put another load of bait out, you know, so just sort of put the float out, a couple of kilos of 20 millers, and you know, I'd probably say 3 or 4 kilos of sort of maize and tigers. 3 rods all on the same clip out there, slackened off, job done. So going into the evening, you know, it was bang on the full moon. It felt, you know, it really did feel good. Everyone, it just felt electric. And sort of sat there watching out. It'd probably be, I mean, the boats were out till probably just gone 7. So yeah, rods were out shortly afterwards. And I'd imagine 8, half 8. It was only about half an hour or so after the boats actually went in. You know, big boats tearing up and down, right on the line as well. Yeah, once you sort of see them, they're not allowed out apparently after about half 7. So 3 rods on the spot, all out no mither. About half 8-ish. Sees one, definitely a common, you know, saw the golden spit's flank sort of come up. Then I see a mirror, you know, there's definitely a couple on me. Obviously you're getting hyped up, buzzing, there ain't many carp in this big pit, and they're on you, you know, they've clearly been on that spot. And yeah, from obviously, like, you know, buzzed up, spoke to one of my mates, he was fishing on another pit, you know, it was all happening there as well, big fizzers all over him, boshers, big feeding. Spoke to another mate, I think he was fishing somewhere in Reading, same situation, you know, it was clearly a good day to be fishing. And yeah, sort of watched into dark, and I must have seen at least 5 different fish show, you know, a couple of them good 30-pounders, but there's probably 8, 9 shows, but definitely 5 different ones, you know, it's only sort of catapult range. Sat there watching, you know, you can see them coming out, shape and scales and so on. And yeah, the line had sort of started for about 11 o'clock, you know, sort of good drop in the bobbin. So I remember, you know, just must have nodded off. I mean, the liners were pretty much non-stop really, turned the sensitivity down a little bit on the alarms. And I remember waking up 12 o'clock, looked out, the left hand, no, it was the middle rod. Bobbin's in the alarm, sort of waiting for it to sort of drop back down. Ting, heard it snap out the clip, you know, start off the clutch. One on. Didn't really do a lot, there's quite a lot of weed out there really. I mean, the strip that was fishing, like I say, is that low onion weed, but sort of short of it and behind it, left and right, you know, big beds of Canadian and milfoil, although not deep water. And yeah, he sort of powered off, left off the spot, gets him in really in a ball of weed, no mither. Not a massive fish, I think it turned out to be 24 pound, little nick out of his tail, leathery one, you know, result, buzzing got one. And it was still this sort of 2 rods on the spot, re-wrapped the rod up, fresh rig, put it up against the bivvy. I thought, right, if anything else happens, you know, I've still got 2 rods out there, so if one of them gets disturbed, then I'll put that one back out. Big area, but just, you know, we'll leave it. And it was only an hour or so later, the right-hander went, it was a tench. So yeah, practically coming light at this point. So with that we're out, the left-hander's still been out all night. 2 fresh rigs, 2 casts, back out on the money. And yeah, straight liners, you know, big lines of fizz. They were buzzing. It was flat calm. You'd see one, it was happening as well to the left, one would show out there. Then you sort of see one bow waving in, drop down, disappear, another line of fizz. You know, you're sort of sat there, waders on next to the rods, thinking any minute, bang, another one was away. You know, middle rod, it had only been out 20 minutes. Ripping line, you know, literally powerful fish going, weeded itself up. Then it's, you know, once they're in that weed, like I say, it's quite shallow water, pretty much dog on a lead, you know, big ball of weed round its head. Yep, in the net, good one. And I think that first one, I think he was, turned out to be bang on 36, quite a chunky, nondescript sort of plain mirror. I had seen a picture of him like before, like when a few other people have fished here years ago. But yeah, wicked one, little single scale in the middle of his body, awesome thing. So yeah, I put him in the sling, rod back round the sticks, fresh rig. You know, I'd already got like a Varay rig sort of made up here, these big 20mm snowmans. And out with another one. As soon as that rod out was out, you know, another spare one done. And it was literally minutes later, got that rod out, sinking the line, back, sort of sat down, kettle on, poof, right under away. Again, you know, it pulled up tight, pinged out the clip, and I'm like, picked it up, and the line's gone directly to the spot, and then pinged off, and the rod's just shot round to the right. You know, this fish probably travelled 30 yards, and probably the range I'm fishing, off to the right. So it's direct contact to it, big explosion. And again, there's a lot of weed close and along the banks here. Obviously the boats sort of take the 30, 40 yard range and keep it low, and close to the bank, you know, it gets quite thick with weed. So again, he's snarled up in the weed, little 10 foot pokers and 20-pound line, you know, cranked him in. Straight as soon as he's come to the net, you know, I've seen them big sort of scales across his shoulder, big chest on him, a little sort of, not little tail, but you know, like a little cut crease tail. I knew which one he was straight away. And not that they got any names, but you know, one that we sort of called him the horse amongst a few of us. Yeah, knew he was a good upper 30 again, you know, so it was a nice 20-pounder in the night, just had that 36, and again we got another big 30-pounder, mega. 37.6 I think he was, so again, in the sling, you know, so I've got one in the sack, one in my sling, one in my like retainer, all sort of like down the margins, and rod back out, back on, you know, kettle on, buzzing, and we're probably 7:30 now in the morning. There's still, you know, you can still see like another fish sort of bow waving to the spot, drop down, want to sort of venture off, and you sort of keep an eye on him, and he'd sort of, you know, mooch off sort of big 100-yard arc, back to it, and the lines will start again, and yeah, bite again. This one just absolutely melted off. Picked him up, you know, flat rodded, off to the right, everything slows down again in the weed. Again, dog on a lead. There's not, apart from the first initial surge, you know, there's not a great deal to the battles. And yeah, gets him in, coaxes him in. Just see sort of an half linear and a massive sort of paddle breaking out the back of this weed bend. I'm thinking, oh, don't recognise this one. You know, stare at the pictures of the ones we've seen quite often. And nearing the net. He's in there, big ball of weed, you know, ripping all the weed off. Another bit, you know, another good one. He's clearly a mid-30. Yeah, I think he was bang on 30, 35 pound. You know, a couple of big scales, real big scales, you know, size of bigger than your hand on one side, the other side sort of half linear. It's almost like a little bit of a rud mouth, whether he'd been attacked by otter at some point, you know. They are quite present in the area. But yeah, you know, 3 good ones, that's right. He's in the net now, you know, so down to sort of one net. And I think I've got a third in the van, you know, so I've got him out. He's got more holes in it, he'd probably escape if you got one, but it's a net. Get him out, chucked him out just in case there's a spare. And yeah, rod back out. I was literally stood next to it, and the other rod I thought I caught the line. It did, you know, straight off the clutch, chucked that rod to the side, picked him up, another one on. And yeah, this thing was just a sicko. I think this is the only one I had to go out in the boat for. You know, it charged off, ground to a halt. But you know, on the sort of pressure that I'd given the others to get a move in, this one was just, you know, that little bit more. You're just thinking, nah, the boat's there, why? Straight in the boat in the net. Forgot the oar though. Yeah, just in a rush, boat in, net, out there, just wind yourself to him, steady. To it directly above it, you know, like I said, the 10 foot stepped up 3.5, like scope thing, the little pokers, right above him, you know, nothing. I'm thinking, he's right, lying around it, right above him. Yeah, once he's moving, then he's up, back onto the rod. I'm playing another good one. Big shoulders on him, and you know, clearly a 30-pounder. Toes me up and down a little bit. Eventually, he dives down, bit of Canadian over his head, pops up, pretty flat calm, you know, no wind to deal with. He's in the net. not seeing him either, you know. I'm thinking I got back, I collapsed my net, rolled him right up tight because I forgot my oar, and I just used the spreader block. It took about 20 minutes to get back to the bank. I was only about 40 yards out, but no wind at all. So with the spreader block, I've eventually got there, buzzing, and yeah, put him in the net. You know, I was thinking, Christ, you know, I had four of them all here, sort of like, you know, good 30s. So we weighed him up, and he was just over 33. And yeah, got the rod back out, you know, put him in the other net. So thinking, right, I've got one more net. If I fulfil that, we've got to stop. Yeah, rods are out. Still a couple of, it did look good for a bite, but you know, nothing else ever happened. There was clearly a still fish, a few fish about in the area. But like I say, you see him sort of coming, going. There was a bit of fizzing, and they were clearly doing a big natural area up off to the left. There was 3 or 4 ended up showing there. Yeah, just crazy, absolutely crazy. Without a doubt, one of the best mornings fishing I've ever experienced, without a doubt. So yeah, you can imagine, you know, been up since sort of, hadn't really been asleep. We had about an hour's sleep. Once they're in the retainer, you can never really settle. But yeah, an hour or 2 broken sleep, if that. And yeah, I can imagine 5 sort of mega things in the sort of sling, sack, retainers, nets, chaos in the swim. You know, ended up winding all the rods in. And you can still see the odd one sort of, like I say, cruising to it, getting off. And yeah, rang a few mates and so on, and a few boys come down, and yeah, so started the sort of process of sorting them out. And yeah, just madness, absolute madness. You know, everyone sort of special in its own way. You know, whether it had not been out for maybe 10 years or only ever caught twice in its life, or just the sheer beauty of the things. You know, they were special carp. So eventually, you know, sorted all that out, and yeah, all the arms and back were a bit sore that morning. You know, it's never had to deal with so many big ones, sort of one after the other. You know, you put him back and then out with another one. Yeah, I can imagine quite tired as well. So I was thinking I was meant to go home that day. It was actually the night of the England final, and we've seen them fish, like I say, still 1 or 2 visiting the area, and just really, I wasn't in any fit state for driving. You know, I was tired. I thought, you know what, I'll stick the float back on the spot, ring my brother, cancel the football in the pub. He still go with his mates. Shut the float on the spot, still had a bit of bait left, so yeah, out of a bit more bait, and I think a couple of kilos of 20 millers, literally what I had left. Again, a few handfuls of tigers, what maize I had left, just everything out there. Thinking, you know, although I caught them ones, and there was still, after that, no rods in the water, there was still 1 or 2, at least 2 different ones. You know, you'd watch them come in, visiting that spot. So yeah, I've got to do another night. Made sense really, you know, opportunities like that do not come around all that often. So sorted everything out. Like I say, I didn't really, boat was out most of the day, so we had a few hours kip in the day. But before I did do, you know, I'm sort of tied 6 rigs, 3 to fish with, 3 spares. You know, I say quite tired, and if you have a repeat performance the night before, you know, you'd be absolutely bollocks. So I got as much prepped as I could. All my bait was prepped, everything was done. Boat did the do. As soon as he'd gone in, out with the float, put everything in, bop, bop, bop. Quite simple fishing, done. And yeah, I mean, up quite that night as well. Liners. About 1 o'clock in the morning. It was about no it wasn't. I had a tench about 1:30 in the morning on the right-hander. And was sorting it all out, hung it up against the bivvy. Got back in the bag, shattered, and I was just like, nah, put it back out, make the effort. I was like, oh, having a bit of a talk to myself, you know, what you probably do. Oh, I still got 2 on the spot. Oh no, make the effort. Yeah. Anyway, back out the bag, sorted it all out, made the effort. First cast, no. Second cast, no. You know, at this point, you're like, having a word with yourself. Noddy should have just left it. You should have left it. Anyway, third cast, just perfect. You know, it's hitting the clip. Just, I use quite a lot of nuggets. You know, big snowmans. 100% it can't tangle. Obviously, if you fall just short of your clip, your lead's coming off, or yeah, you know when you get it just right. It's got to kiss it. Blop, doof. Anyway, what I was after. All set up, back in the bag. And it was about an hour and a half later actually, and that rod, clearly a carp, you know, out the clip, clutches away, and shattered, you know, I've picked it up, and this thing's running me ragged, it's gone left, it's gone right. It must have been a lot higher up in the water than the others, where, you know, if it knocks on itself up in the weed, more sort of direct contact to it all the while. But somehow managed to avoid the other lines, and yeah, eventually it's closer in, it snarled right up, you know, to the point where it's on the tip, and you're like, you put a bit of pressure on him, you know, and up in the net. Don't recognise him, you know, big sort of chunky thing, all sort of saggy at his back end, mega, you know, big sloping head on it, half linear. Rolled him up, you know, head torch on the mat. Definitely don't recognise that, mega. Awesome thing, weighed him up, 35.5 in the retainer, sorts him out. And yeah, puts the rod back out. It's coming light now at this point. And I still see one. I just see one sort of fish sort of cruise to the spot, bit of fizzing. You know, I still had the 3 rods out there, and the left had never done a thing. It had always been like the middle and the right. Whether the weed was a little bit thinner that side, or I don't know whether that one was getting snarled over. I don't know. But yeah, 2 rods were put sort of back out there. I think I recast the middle. I thought, oh, you know, obviously having that many bites the morning before, only having the one, seeing a fish there, and I thought, oh, I should have had a bite. So I risked it, wound it in, chucked it back out, and nodded off. Shattered, you know, absolutely needed to catch one some kip, and fast asleep. And the boats can be out from sort of early as 9 o'clock on here. So I remember waking up and it's sort of 9:30ish. You're thinking, oh, got the waders on, sort of looked down there, no sign of anyone out on the jetty, you know, loading up the boat or anything. Sort of sat, flipped the kettle on, sorting my head out, and middle rod's just exploded, fish at the surface, tore off. Without, you know, the most powerful out of all of them, I'm thinking, what's this thing? Hook left, gone, solid. Absolutely solid, to the point, you know, I've got the boat ready, one last put, oh, it's coming. Yeah, he's coming. Again, once I get that ball of weed round him, it really does sort of slow him down. But yeah, kept him moving. And he was the smallest one of the trip, eventually gets him in the net. Real sort of long, obviously heavily sort of spawned out like a pencil he was, but leather almost, you know. Red line straight down the middle of him. Mega little rounded tail, mega cool one. I think he was 22 or just under 23 pound. So yeah, we've got that smaller one out, you know, he's sort of 22, netted him up, rang out a couple of mates, a few mates come down, a couple of brews. And yeah, got the smaller of the 2 out, sorted him out. And then, you know, went sent about getting out the sort of mega sort of 35 pound we had in the night. And although I only sort of got a glimpse of him, you know, with the head torch and the batteries dying in it, you know, you're slapping your head trying to make it brighter, fading, you know, come on. You sort of get a bit of a glimpse of him, you know. I thought, checking through the pitch, I thought, it's definitely something I ain't seen. It was more the characteristics of him, you know, big sloping head, big scales, massive overslung mouth. And it's only when you sort of, you know, zip that sling back and you can appreciate him in sort of true daylight. You know, he was awesome. Colours on him, real dark, big sovereign scales. Like I say, his massive overslung head, big mouth. Little just carp perfection, you know. Not the biggest in the world. I mean, he's a monster at 35 pound, you know, but for me, that's what it's all about, you know, with big white mouth, not a hook mark to be seen. Again, I'm not saying that he's never been caught, but certainly the lads that have fished here previous and so on, you know, there's no record between us of any capture of him. Proper special one, yeah, truly special one.
It's madness. It's madness. How did it come to this? It's madness. It's madness.
7 carp in just over 24 hours. 5 of them over 30 pound and looking as crazy as this thing.
It's madness. It's madness. How did it come to this? It's madness. It's madness.
Captures like that for me that just make catfishing so special, you know, it'll never ever get boring.